Is your style ruining your art or holding it back? How could that even be possible? If you think it might be, I'm going to go over some important topics to consider that could drastically improve your work. Let's start off with an experiment. Here's Jerry Smith from Rick and Morty. If I change his hair, his body, his outfit, we have a new character entirely, and one for the style of the show works well. While watching the show, you don't realize they pretty much have the exact same face. So this should work on your own work, right? Just switching some things around and you can easily create new characters out of it. That should work, right? Right? Here is a drawing I did of Noah Zora a little while back. If we change the hair, the body, the outfit, that doesn't make him Nami now. I'm so sorry, Zoro. That should have worked. I'll come back to you later, I swear. So, what the fuck? Art style is a very hot topic amongst artists, especially newer artists. How do I develop my art style is probably a question we've all asked ourselves at least one point on our art journeys. Maybe we've had some art acquaintances who maybe lacked a bit of the fundamentals and blamed their poor draftsmanship on their style. And maybe we even thought to ourselves, oh god, am I doing that too? But hey, if you want to do abstract art, go for it. I don't think there's one way to develop an art style, and I think it entirely depends on you. Your life, your experiences, the stuff you like to do, the media you like to consume, and so on. So how could style be wrong? The short answer is, it can't, because art is subjective. But style can absolutely be holding you back from the goals you want to achieve. That's what it was like for me for years. So today I'm going to go over what I learned and go over the 3 important I's of style. I would say my style has changed pretty drastically over my entire career, and it's never easy to switch up how you work, and I hope my experiences can help you. Obviously what I did with Jerry and Summer won't work for every character, but it does illustrate that the more simplistic the art style, the easier it is to create different characters by not changing too much about their faces. Just a few lines on a more stylized face can drastically change the appearance of it. But those same lines on a more realistic face won't make as much of a difference. This really just goes to show the lines you leave out are just as important as the ones you put in. This was a difficult thing for me to learn because as someone who started off doing more detailed, realistic drawings, I wasn't great at simplifying things. I think it's been my biggest shortcoming now that I'm going for a more stylized approach in my work. If you've ever seen the episode of SpongeBob where he draws like the perfect circle by drawing a realistic face and then like erasing it until there's just a circle left. Yeah, that's pretty much what it's like, simplifying my own art. My style isn't fully realistic anymore, but it's still more realistic than animated media. So a big takeaway from this is to have a clearer understanding of the style you're going for in your work, and to find ways to use that to benefit your process, whether you're doing something realistic, completely stylized, or somewhere in between. For me, that looks like identifying that I'm going for more of a line work approach with slightly simplified rendering. If done super realistically, it would create very uncanny looking faces, and that's not what I'm going for, but I'm also not going for super cartoony either. This is what held me back for a long time. I feel like I was stuck doing realism every time I would create a piece just because that's what I always did. And when I would try to do something more stylized, the moment I started to not like it, I would just revert back to realism and heavy rendering. This led to me not really enjoying the results or even the process. I was stuck doing what I knew and little growth happened. The only way to grow and change is to push past the moment you feel like it isn't working out and not to panic. Just be analytical and ask yourself what needs to change and identify where you're falling short of your expectations. You might be thinking, that's great and all, but I don't even know what my style is. While making this illustration you're seeing now, I was looking at a lot of retro anime art, more specifically, Slam Dunk. I really like the way they draw their characters, especially their male characters. I wanted to see what would happen if I combine it with my own style. I do a lot of Zelda fan art, so I picked to do a Link portrait to experiment with this idea. I like working with this approach because I'm not trying to copy the style one for one. I'm really just trying to see if there's anything that I like in this retro style that can maybe benefit my own work. I already have a relatively fleshed out style, but I still like looking at different influences to improve my work. Combining my own work with Zelda and Slam Dunk can create something a bit different and out of my comfort zone. You'll notice I'm not trying to copy Slam Dunk's style one for one. I'm definitely going for more of a painterly approach and a bit heavier rendering because that's the way I like to work and that's what I enjoy doing. But the thicker lines, the sharper shadows, were both inspired by Slam Dunk's style and definitely influenced the final result. And the rest of the painting is really just fine-tuning all the details. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the result. So what does this have to do with identifying your style? I went over what identifies my style, but what identifies your style could be completely different. If you gave everyone in the world a piece of paper, artist or not, and told them to paint an apple, no two apples would be exactly alike. Something about the apples would be different, even if only slightly. So everyone has a style in them to start, for better or worse. And we can absolutely influence our innate style if we choose to. Like I said earlier in the video, your style is a culmination of all things that make you, you. As a human, you're drawn to certain things and not drawn to other things. Identify the art you like, the art that made you want to do art in the first place. And try to break down what exactly it is you like about it. You can emulate what those artists are doing and combine it with other artists and create something entirely new. For me, I love the golden age of American illustration. I read a lot of Andrew Loomis when I was learning how to draw, and N.C. Wyeth's work has been a huge inspiration for me. But I'm also really inspired by a lot of Japanese influences. I grew up playing a lot of Japanese video games and watching a ton of anime. I also really like the work of a lot of Japanese artists, the main one being Yoshitaka Amano. Plus the hundreds of artists I follow on social media. I'm constantly looking at other artists to see how they're achieving what they do, so that plays a huge part in my work. I'm only taking bits and pieces from each influence. I'm not trying to copy everything about them. I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to completely imitate some of your favorite artists at first. It's such a great way to learn, and doing master studies can be super helpful. But it's important to not just become a copycat. When your art clearly looks like someone else's, and that someone else is very popular, everyone will just see you as a clone of that person. Your own voice won't be present in your work. Without getting too deep into it, this is also why I think there's a huge difference between human and AI art. While we can take subtle things that we like and dislike and combine it with what is already present in our style, we can create something uniquely ourselves, whereas AI will just steal it and slap it all together. Okay, enough of that topic. An example of how I manage being inspired by artists without being a copy machine is I love this work of Yoshitaka Amano, and I want to do my own spin on it, and ended up creating this Zelda Tears of the Kingdom fan art. But looking at the pieces side by side, you wouldn't say that they're just clones of each other, but you can see how the original influenced mine. It's more about capturing the vibe than the details. And if you look at the actual shading, you can see some N.C. Wyeth influence present too. You sort of saw me do this in the last section, but let's dive a little deeper. Let's try combining 3 artist styles into one art piece, combining N.C. Wyeth, Yoshitaka Amano, and myself. And to do this, I'm going to make a Sephiroth fan art. I'm really looking at Amano's work for composition and looking at Wyeth's for the rendering. I also love the way Yoshitaka Amano will paint huge graphic shapes to create really interesting compositions. So I thought having Sephiroth's one wing go across a good chunk of the canvas could create more interest in this portrait. Here I'm really trying to get some clean lines before I move on to anything else. For me, it's very important I don't rush this step, or it could really ruin the whole piece. And I'm also really just trying to focus on what I can learn from my 2 art inspirations. More specifically with Wyeth, I'm trying to capture the way he would lose some of the facial features in shadow, but still make them completely readable. It can really create an interesting and almost eerie look. I've seen some modern artists use this technique to get some really cool results and always wanted to give it a shot myself. I also wanted to make the mood of this piece very sinister due to it being Sephiroth, and he's, well, sinister. Just a bad boy. Leave Cloud and the others alone, please. They've been through enough, thank you. But yeah, that's sort of the beauty in getting a good eye for art and technique. You can really play with different ways of working, and this could not only help you improve, but also keep it fun and fresh. Here I'm trying to figure out a way to paint the wing, but not make it too detailed or too eye-catching to the point where it distracts attention away from Sephiroth's face, which is supposed to be the focal point. Also, if you notice, I switched the background from light to dark and ended up sticking with it. If I'm being honest, I didn't know which one I preferred. So when I posted on Instagram, I made a poll, and I guess I made the right call. Here's the finished piece. Pretty cool, and definitely feels different than my usual way of working. Something that helps me with implementing my style for entire pieces is that I mostly like to work on characters, so for me, identifying my style can come straight down to how I draw faces, and that sort of sets the tone for the rest of the piece. Like, as soon as the character is there, I know exactly what type of scene it needs to be, but this might be different for you, just depending on how you like to work. Study realistic faces, study completely stylized faces, and everything in between. Notice what makes these different from the previous ones, and push and pull things you like and dislike. On this chart, I would say I fall somewhere around here for the most part, but this doesn't have to be concrete every time. You can change art styles wherever you see fit, and a lot of really good and successful artists do that. As you can tell from my normal pieces, they're pretty detailed, but if you look at me on screen right here, this drawing, I'm breaking some type of fourth wall. It's very stylized, and it's fun to do both. And this goes for landscapes and backgrounds too. Look at everything from cartoony, anime, realistic, impressionistic backgrounds, and whatever else you enjoy. There's something to learn from all of it, and all of it has value. The Ro Noa Nami piece didn't work earlier because I can't change male and female faces without actually changing a lot of the characteristics. It won't work like Jerry and Summer did because my style isn't as simplified as that. So let's go back and see what we can change and maybe make it a little less cursed. If you saw my last video, I went through some key differences between male and female heads and faces. I'm keeping what we learned in that video in mind throughout this whole switcheroo. I'll have the link below if you want to check that video out too. If you notice, one of the first things I did was soften all the overall features of the face and head. I also had to fix up some of the anatomy to make it fit with Nami better, since Nami has, I think the scientific term is called boobs, and Zoro doesn't. But yeah, you know, cleaning up the hair and the clothing, and I have to say, as you can probably tell, working this way is pretty strange. I can't say I've done anything like this before. Doing a complete repaint of two very different characters was a fun experiment though. And hey, look at that. Doesn't look too bad. For my style, I think it works. Told you I'd fix this. I got your back, Zoro. It's great to learn new things and do a few studies, but if you don't actually apply these things into your own work, you'll never fully understand them or use them to their full potential. A couple portraits were a decent start and fun to experiment with, but I need to create something bigger in order to really hone in on the things I learned. Sticking with the Final Fantasy theme, I decided to do a piece inspired by the Loveless play in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I love this section of the game and love the character designs as well, and knew as soon as I saw it that I would have to do some fan art of it. But I also really wanted to get just the general vibe of the game in there too, aside from the play. Without spoilers, if you know anything about Final Fantasy VII, you know it has some pretty sad moments. But to me, the overall message of the game is a hopeful one. It seems like one terrible thing after one terrible thing just keeps happening to the main cast, but they keep going. They push forward and even have a lot of fun and jokes along the way. So while it's nice to have art and artists inspire you, I think the message you're trying to get across in your art is just as, if not more, important. I said style could be ruining your art, and I still stand by it because it's what happened to me. I remember working on this portrait of Eren Yeager from Attack on Titan, and it was just a hassle from start to finish. I didn't enjoy the process at all, or the results, and when I posted it, it got very little engagement. I knew it wasn't what I wanted to do, and I just fell back on old habits. I knew I wanted to change my art for a while, but I just couldn't for some reason. Like something in me was afraid to do something different because it might look bad. So I just made a boring portrait, and it wasn't terrible, but it just wasn't really anything. I didn't try anything different, and I didn't get anything out of it I hadn't already done many times before. It wasn't satisfying at all. And when art is one of the main things that satisfies you, it stings. I really took a step back and identified what needed to change. In my next piece, I had more of a line art style, the shading was simpler, and I really liked how it turned out. It was cleaner, it had emotion behind it, and when I posted it, it did well. People liked it. Like somehow they could tell I enjoyed making it more than my last one, and maybe you don't think that the Aaron one is bad, or maybe you just don't see a big difference between the two, and that's fine, but I really can. And it took a while, and it can still be a struggle at points, but it's way more rewarding. No one style is wrong, and no one style is right for anyone. But if you feel like you know you want to change and just aren't doing so, maybe this process can help. I feel like I spent so much time just avoiding the changes I know I needed to make in order to get something finished and make it look half decent. This led to me rushing out emotionless art. If I would have just taken the time to really stop and think about the art I wanted to make and just persisted and just pushed through the difficult parts, I could have made a lot more progress early on. I sometimes stop to think about how much time was wasted just not realizing this sooner. But I don't regret anything, and it's all part of the learning process. I still have a lot of areas where I know I can improve, but I'm on a much more satisfying path than I was before. No matter how much you feel stuck in your ways, you can always keep making efforts to get better. Keep pushing forward, and make sure you have some fun and jokes along the way. And I'll let the rest of the illustration play out. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, there are a lot more videos on the way, so please consider subscribing. If you want to keep up with what I'm creating more in real time, you can follow me on my other social medias. All will be linked down below. Thanks again, and keep on making art. Bye.